So there are some few left, and that's one of those few photographs left. So I started my career as a math teacher, and at some point in my career, I moved to an international school as a teacher, and they asked me if I could teach ICT. ICT is Information Communications Technology, and I'm talking about the times where there was Excel was taught to kids, and also there was a computer program called Logo. If you somehow remember what Logo is Seymour Pappert's first programming computer program for teaching kids mathematics or science, but one of the very basic and most influential computer programs. So I was teaching Logo, and then I found myself teaching mathematics with Logo rather than teaching computer with Logo. And then I moved to another country in North Africa, and then they asked me if I could teach science. I think it was life science, which is like biology. And then they asked me if I could teach earth science, which is like chemistry. I said, why not? How hard can it be for a math teacher to teach other subject areas? So, thank you. So I also have this teaching experience, not only in maths, but also in science and technology, which I'm very proud of. And it helped me develop the ideas that I developed over the years. At some point, I was in Switzerland teaching mathematics there, and then I decided to move to US to do my PhD at Texas A&M. And then I was there when this whole STEM construct, or the notion of STEM, just became as a huge buzzword in late 2000s, between 2008 and 2012, and I'm also going to talk about that. I came back to Turkey, to Bilkent University, to work with pre-service teachers, where we met Jolt at the University of Cambridge University. And now for the last 4 years, I'm at Bahçeşehir University, and 90% of my time at the university is in-service teacher training. And I only teach just one course at the university, which is statistics. I'm more known with the project that I am running, which is called STEM Integrated Teaching Project, but I'm also an associate professor at the Faculty of Education.
It's down, and then here.
Does it move? Yeah, wrong direction, right? Okay. So this was me at the end of my first years of teaching in Turkey, because it was so difficult, and it was a very challenging experience. And I set a personal goal that I want the kids just to sit at the end of my first year. You know, that was my goal as a teacher, not to teach quadratics, not to teach limit, but just to make them sit there and then listen to me. So it was a horrible experience for the first, especially during the first year. And then it became much better, but I just felt this frustration. Probably, if you had any teaching experience, you too had experienced that kind of a frustration during your first years of teaching. There might be several reasons, but I'm just going to talk about the reasons why I felt so frustrated. The first reason that I thought was, perhaps I'm frustrated because the public doesn't really respect teaching in Turkey. But if you look at the data, which is a very comprehensive research done by the Varki Institute, shows that Turkey is actually one of the countries where teaching is the most, one of the most respected professions. And this research is good research, but what do you recognize about the countries which are at the right-hand side of the spectrum with high respect in the society for teaching, and those countries in the left end of the spectrum? Do you recognize any patterns? Which one is the most shocking one, do you think? Something which doesn't fit with your beliefs. Huh? Greece, right. But Greece, Turkey, similar cultures, right? And China, South Korea also not too far. So what I see from this is teaching is mostly more respected in the Eastern cultures than it is in the West. And if you look at the countries on the left, teaching is not that popular when it's compared to a medical profession, for example, or an engineering profession. So if you like to be a teacher, Turkey is one of the best countries if you like the respect from the parents. It looks like it. So it shouldn't be the reason why I'm so frustrated, right? So another reason might be perhaps the salaries are not really that high in Turkey for teachers. Now this is again from the same research where they somehow corrected for the purchasing power parity in each country, and then compared the life conditions, living conditions in different countries of a teacher. And if you look at it, the Turkish teachers are not really the poorest in the society, or their life standard is not really that different than a teacher in France or Spain. So that basically means if a Turkish teacher drives a Polo Volkswagen, that's the same car that a Spanish teacher in Spain drives. Although the price of the car may be different in different countries. And moreover, the Turkish society believes that the teachers should earn around 30 or 40% more than their current salary, which is also, that should make me feel much better as a teacher in Turkey. So one other reason that I'm so frustrated, perhaps the students don't like mathematics or science in Turkey. And if you look at the PISA rankings, the one on the left ranks Turkey at the almost very bottom of the countries that took the PISA test. You're aware what PISA is, right? Yes. Excellent. So Western countries, Finland, Germany is at the top of the list, where Turkey, Romania, and some other countries at the very bottom of the list of the PISA rankings in math or science. But what is really interesting is that Turkey tops the list consecutively for the last 12 years in terms of students' attitude towards mathematics, where the attitude towards mathematics is not that high mostly in Western countries, in Western European countries. So if you were a journalist and if you like to put a headline on the newspaper, what would you say about this relationship? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought that they would not call me when I'm abroad. What would be the title of the newspaper?
They're enthusiastic, right?
Yeah. But their ranking,
That's weird.
isn't that?
Yeah.
So
It's a contradiction, in a way.
it looks like it, right?
Yeah.
So here's a headline for you. If you would like to do well in mathematics, hate it. And from the other way around, if you like mathematics, make sure that you are going to be unsuccessful, right? So this kind of paradox is actually very interesting, and it appears mostly as a paradox, and it's actually called attitude achievement paradox, because many times we assume that, especially as young teachers, if my students likes me in the classroom, they're going to like my subject area. If they like my subject area, that they're going to behave well in the class. And if they behave well, and then if they like the subject area, that they are going to be good at it. That kind of a chain of logic doesn't really work in all conditions and in all societies. So this is a paradox that we have to be aware of. And as a young mathematics teacher, it's not the case that my students hate mathematics. So I shouldn't be unhappy about that. One other thing is the gender gap. I forgot to mention about it. The gender gap gets wider and wider in West Europe compared to the East Europe. There's almost no difference between the girls and boys in terms of their math or science achievement in Eastern Europe compared to wider gender gaps in Western Europe. So, so what are the principals think about the Turkish math or science teachers or in Turkish teachers in general? The red bars show the average of the OECD countries. Give me some of the OECD countries. France, Germany, mostly the developed countries you may call. And Turkey is one of the very few which are developing but still in the OECD. But so this is a nice comparison. Teachers skipping schools. Is that a problem that the principals see as an important problem at their school in Turkey? Not that much compared to the OECD average. Teachers resisting change. OECD average 30%, Turkish average is 20%. And one reason is because Turkish teachers are very, very young professionals. 60% of Turkish teachers are younger than age of 40, very, very young. Teachers are harsh with their students, doing this and that, almost no problem in Turkey. The principals think that Turkish teachers are too relaxed with their students, or they're too nice with their students. Teachers are not well prepared for the class. Now that is one thing that we see as a problem in Turkey, because teachers are used to come and go to the class with almost no preparation, because they perceive teaching as a profession where they talk. And if they know what they are going to talk, if it is written somewhere, if it is already prepared a year before, they don't have to change it. They can do the same thing over and over again over the years. That looks like a bigger problem in Turkey than the rest of the OECD. But the biggest problem in Turkey is that the teachers don't see the students as learners. They just see the class in front of them. And they're teaching to the class rather than teaching to the person in front of them. So they don't really care about whether you're learning or not. It's all about what you are doing as a teacher in the class. And I can give you a story from my own upbringing as a young mathematician at the university. Perhaps you also experience the same type of math teaching. The professor comes to the class and he's lecturing about a certain theorem, and he's not telling the theorem or discussing the theorem with you, but he's discussing the theorem with Leibniz. And then he's discussing the theorem with Goethe on the other hand, and then with some other huge mathematician. It's like talking to the beyond the borders of the class. That's one type of math teaching that I was exposed to. Another one was that the professor had such an intimate relationship with the board that we don't really understand what's going on between them. And another type of teaching that I was exposed was, this is serious. This guy writes with right hand and erases with the left hand. This is the type of math teaching that I was exposed to. And research shows that your math teaching is going to be modeled by a majority of all the other factors from the way that you are taught math. You know, all the other pedagogical trainings that you receive, all the books that you read, all what Jolt is telling you to do with GeoGebra has a limited effect compared to your teachers and the way that you were taught mathematics. So we just have to be aware of that fact. So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and then plus A. And then I had a very brief discussion last night at the dinner why instead of calling it STEAM, I kept calling it STEM plus A. And that A is not just arts, but perhaps aesthetics as well, and also architecture perhaps at some point. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm not sure this is the correct slides, but yeah, I think so. So when I came back to Turkey, I was involved in a study where I can see what's going on at the Turkish schools, and then I was shocked by some of the teaching practices that I saw at the schools. Some of them were really, really innovative. The teacher showed me, for example, what was it? A robot drawing figure. The robot is drawing something on the picture. Really? And then some other practice, it was like a greenhouse. It was this huge house, environmental house or something. Not the greenhouse, but it's a greenhouse with all the different things. And then amazing thing. And then after digging into it a little bit more, I discovered that it's not the product of the students as a class activity. It's mostly that 5 students or 6 students out of a school, they gathered after school as an after school activity, and then they work on these type of projects. And the rest of the students are just, again, seeing a teacher who is telling mathematics on the board or just talking to Leibniz when he's telling about mathematics. And sometimes the schools are using these students not only in math projects, but the same students also go to the science fairs. The very same students also go to the robotics fairs. The very 5 students among 600 in the school also talks about a theater event. So it looks like the whole school is helping 5 or 10 students, and the rest is not really doing anything at the school, just learning it normally. And not only that, certain type of schools in Turkey were offering more advanced math or science courses. And at the end of 10th grade, the Turkish math curriculum teaches you polynomials. You remember polynomials? Functions, polynomials, Horner method, how to divide polynomials, really cool stuff, right? At 11th grade, the curriculum is divided into 2. One of them is called the basic math, the other one is called the advanced math. If you would like to go to social sciences, you go to basic math, and if you would like to become a scientist or engineer, then you learn about advanced math. And advanced math includes integration, basic calculus or AP calculus, you can tell. But what the basic math includes is amazing because you learn about financial mathematics, which is like adding numbers or multiplying with numbers or how to spend your money wisely in the market. Now, be careful. You learn this after you learn the polynomials in the 10th grade. So mostly the curriculum actually telling us, or the ministry thinks, that learning good mathematics, learning rigorous mathematics is the right of only people who would like to go to the math or science departments. The rest doesn't really need any serious mathematics or science. A historian doesn't really, or someone who's working in archaeology doesn't really need to understand what the carbon-13 test is about. It's just enough for him to just to see the results and then believe in them without really seeing the reason behind it. So rigorous STEM was perceived as the right of certain group of people. That was what I found. Extracurricular activities became the norm, and they just became so unrelated to the curriculum itself. It wasn't like an extracurricular, it was more like an off-curricular activity. You wouldn't believe, but I've seen a zoo in a school. There was a zoo in one of the private schools. Why would you build a zoo in a school? Why would you send students on robotics activities and every fair and this? During the times that they should learn math or science. Yeah? Not after the school, but during the actual school times. And then the curriculum or the way that ministry ran things in Turkey became so from top to bottom that actually ministers started saying that you should teach math like this, you should teach science like this. The way that we were talking in the morning, the same mentality now transferred into a university, which dictates the way that you teach any subject area at the university. So I just said this, robots did not overtake the jobs and will not, but it's because it's really easy to turn the teachers into robots with standardized curriculum and frequent testing of the students from throughout the centralized exams. Of course, parents have unrealistic expectations about their daughters and sons in all Europe and in the US probably. And policy was ill-informed of local research. No one cared about your PhD thesis. The policymakers did not really read or know about the research that you do in your local setting, which is probably the most useful type of research, I believe, rather than this huge studies with huge sample sizes. Many times we learn less from those big research compared to a research that you do with in a certain school. So please value your own research and promote it. So the way that I see STEM after all this is that it is science has a certain way of knowing things, and it includes observation, it includes experimenting. And on the other side, arts has a different way of knowing things, and it's mostly based on imagining things, which may or which may not be real. And we're living in a time where we need to integrate those different ways of knowing. The way that we know things in mathematics is quite different than the way that we know things in science, or it is different in engineering. So why don't we show an effort just to combine those different ways of knowing in order to reach the ultimate truth that we are seeking in so many years. So this STEM thing, in my understanding, the notion of STEM can be divided into three major categories. One of them is the political STEM, the other one is the popular STEM, and the one that I've been working on, and I like all people in education research work on, is the pedagogical STEM. There's unfortunately a fourth one called the populist STEM, and those people are the ones who are trying to sell robotic kits, who are trying to make money, and who are trying to take advantage of this whole popularity of this word. The political STEM was mostly about the US, and is mostly concerned with the needs of either Western Europe or mostly the US, where Asia is producing more math or scientists, and the Americans in the business of science and math are decreasing in number. So how can we actually increase the number of people who are working in math or science? That was one of the concerns in 2008 during the Bush administration, actually, in the US. You can imagine the thinking of Bush. You already know that. So that was this nationalistic movement that we need more math or science who are Americans. And then another thing was there's a huge shortage of math or science teachers in the US, and not only in terms of number, but also in the number that people who can teach advanced math or science. So most of the time, the schools were not able to offer AP type of AP level classes because there were no teachers that can do that. So this STEM notion became a political agenda, something to motivate people to go into STEM fields. And then this notion of STEM became the what is that called? The word, the flag of going into math or science. You have to learn STEM. You have to study STEM. That's, I think, quite a policy type of thing. The other understanding or the other interpretation of STEM is, again, based in the American culture. It's mostly in the punk culture, and it's also based in the garage culture in the US. I don't know what your experiences was, Joel, but in every house that I've seen, some type of a studio with lots of tools there in the garage in the US. We don't have that in Europe. We have smaller houses. We don't have garages with lots of tools to work on. But do we?
Yeah, no, but in the US they don't use it. They just have everything.
It may be the case, but that culture is still there. Starting from the 60s and the 70s, people like to do things. People like to create things. People like to break things and then do it themselves. They don't like to spend the money about if they can actually do it by themselves. So that culture is there, and then it started with actually the punk culture in the US. Do you remember the character? What was the name of it? You seem to remember that. Tyler don't spend, if you can do it. And then, of course, the Lego culture is also based on that. And then nowadays it is called the maker movement under this popular STEM category that I will see. People are working on maker spaces. There are maker fairs all across Europe and in the US. There are robotic competitions. FLL, FRC, First Lego, and there's VEX now. They're competing. They're trying to get into the schools, sell these kits. And what the students are expected to do, they're just expected to follow a certain type of guideline, like the IKEA furniture, yeah, or they're learning to compete against each other. There are the bad sides of it, but there are also some good sides to it, some advantages that the students learn to collaborate in a team, to work in a team, and to work against a deadline and then finish a product, which are all very nice. But I would question the level and type of mathematics or science they learn during these activities and how much math or science they actually use while they are involved in these type of maker activities. The way that I see it is like we have science, serious science, and then we have popular science, which are both very valuable. And the maker seems to be like the equivalent of popular science for engineering. It looks like it is a popular engineering, which is still quite valuable. So the third category under the STEM notion, I think, should be more concerned to us as educators. And the question that I asked to myself when I started what I do in Turkey was, how can I encourage teachers to have fun in the classroom? Because talking to an imaginary mathematician is no fun. Talking to the board is no fun. Somebody telling you how to teach, what to teach is no fun. Giving tests to the students and then seeing them solve the students, or worse, sitting in your desk and there's a queue of students here telling you, can you solve number 5 for me? And then you solve it. And the next question comes and asks, can you solve number 17 for me? That is no fun in the teaching. But how can we actually bring fun into teaching again? And two, how can we motivate teachers to teach rigorous math and science so that all students are engaged in complex problems? And those complex problems are not the test questions. They're not the multiple type of questions, but they are the questions that we deal daily in our lives. For example, the morning traffic in Linz, which I experienced yesterday. Or how can we actually arrange the metro lines? How can we arrange the traffic lights for the maximum and optimum level of comfortness? Or how can we model a Turkish tea glass? That type of questions. So the pedagogical foundation of any pedagogical STEM approach, I think, is mostly based on Dewey's learning by doing movement. Learning by doing existed in the literature, and Dewey was a champion of it during the progressivist movements in the 1920s or 1930s. Berlin and Berlin is a researcher that I would recommend you to read. Berlin shows curriculum integration becomes a buzzword, becomes popular in almost every 10 years. And the way that they measured it, it was in terms of the number of papers that are published under curriculum integration, how to integrate different curricular areas together. The number of papers are increasing in every 10 years, and it's going down immediately, and then going up again, and then going down. The reason that it's going down is probably because of teacher resistance to integrating the curriculum. But the reason that it goes up is this firm belief that we have as educators that life is complex and it doesn't really make sense to divide the school into distinct subject areas. So how can we actually bring the subject areas together? So Robert, that's my PhD advisor, and also a prominent figure on STEM, said we already know what PBL is, project-based learning. So why don't we just do the PBL in a more interdisciplinary fashion? And then came up with the idea with SLAW that STEM PBL. And that was one of the first uses of STEM in educational research. And I was lucky to be his student during the 2008 and 2008. So the way that I see things is the solution to prevent the trend going down is not to work on the curriculum, I believe, but to work on the teachers and to help the teachers work together and have fun, see the fun in working together. But in order to teach their own subject area, not to teach something called STEM. I have to collaborate with a science teacher in order to teach mathematics better. That is my understanding after all this, and then that's what I advocate as STEM integrated teaching. The way that I also interpret Dewey is that we also have to think the difference between learning by doing and how to adapt it according to the 21st century needs. And I just said, why don't we actually call it learning by making rather than learning by doing? Because the people understand learning by doing is mostly that somebody is telling you what to do. But in making, nobody is telling you what to make. It is your choice, and you have the freedom to make whatever you like to do. Give me an example of a use of the verb do. Do exercises. Do your homework. Which homework? The homework that I assign you to do. Give me a sentence with a make.
Make a cake.
Make a cake. Can this cake be with raisins? Can it be with apples? Can it be with what? Whatever you like to do. That gives you the freedom. It's you who decides what to make out of the mathematics or science that you use. Dewey probably meant to say learning by making, but we probably misunderstand it all over. So the integrated teaching framework became a theoretical roadmap for teachers, and it has some principles that I like to talk about and perhaps give you some examples of it. The 4 principles that surrounds teaching in an integrated way is equity, relevance, interdisciplinarity, and rigor in the main discipline. Equity suggests or mandates that rigorous math is not the right of a selected group of students. It is the right of every student to learn the most rigorous mathematics or science that he's interested and he likes to learn about. And access to effective teaching and curriculum is a human right. It's not the right of a certain people at certain schools. Relevance is bringing in those 21st century life experiences into the classroom, which are at the intersection of both teacher interest and student interests. For example, as a teacher, I like to watch Doctor Who. I like to watch Big Bang Theory. I like to read Isaac Asimov. I like to read science fiction. I like to read math books. My interest as a teacher should matter in the classroom. I shouldn't be put in a position to read Harry Potter just to make my class relevant to the students. I'm a part of the class, and my interest as a teacher should also matter to the class community. But many times, it is a teacher who's trying to learn and adapt to the student interests. And those student interests are mostly based in the pop culture. So there should be some kind of a negotiation between the teacher and the student, because we are the community. It's not just they are the community. We are not the outsiders. Teachers are also the community of the classroom. And the third principle is interdisciplinarity, because that is the way that the scientists work. That is the way that scientists at CERN works in Switzerland. That is the scientists in Linz labs work. Some of them are coming from science, some of them are coming from engineering. So why don't we as teachers also work together in order to help each other become better teachers in our own subject area? And the last one is rigor. Math looks to life quite differently than science. So we should also appreciate and be aware of those unique characteristics of our own subject area. An engineer interprets the world quite differently than a scientist. So rigor should also be included in the subject area. And of course, the knowledge of the horizon. If a certain group of students would like to learn more about it, we should be ready to offer those knowledge to that. So what we do at Bahçeşehir University LabSTAR Center, we do teacher trainings. And our teacher trainings is mostly composed of two different tracks. One of them is quite new to Turkey, and it's our STEM Leader Teacher program. It consists of 92 hours, but what it makes it unique is that it continues throughout the year. Many times in Turkey, and I suspect that is the case probably in your countries as well, that the teachers learn about new pedagogies, or they attend seminars in June for a month after the school ends, and in September before the school starts. And sometimes there are PD days, but just one or two. And the professor comes, or an expert comes, and now you never see the expert again. You only see that person once in your lifetime. When you would like to implement those ideas into your classroom, when you like to see them in action, there's no one that you can actually ask about. There's no one that you can talk about those new ideas and the way that you're implementing. So we would like to be next to the teachers. And that's why we distributed the program throughout the year on a regular fashion. We meet with them face-to-face, and then online. We give them assignments. They talk to each other. And it became like a huge thing. And there's a little bit of a
STEM Integrated Teaching Framework provided teacher educators at both STEM with a data-driven roadmap for STEM education. Based on this framework, several programs for teachers have been developed over the years. The flagship program of LabSTAR is a sustainable professional development program for mathematics and science teachers at secondary and high school levels. At this PD program, teachers undertake 92 hours of study, which consisted of face-to-face workshops, online training, the writing of lesson plans, classroom practice and evaluation, and also examinations over the course of 8 months. Shorter online training courses, such as courses on computational thinking, mathematical modeling, earlySTEM for K4, or STEM for gifted students are also offered as part of our advanced STEM education program. Our resources section at inteach.org, which includes a rich bank of teacher-created lesson plans, is a product of our online professional learning community and readily available for our visiting members.
So that 92-hour long, this huge program, is divided into 4 different quarters. Each quarter focuses on a different STEM pedagogy, starting from project-based learning, move on to scientific inquiry, and computational thinking, and then lastly mathematical modeling, but in an interdisciplinary way and in accordance with the STEM integrated teaching framework. At the end of 4 years, now we could move on to make this whole program completely online. But only after we had some leader teachers across Turkey, where they can be consulted, where we can hook the teachers in a certain city in Eastern Turkey with the teachers that we worked before. So we didn't start it online from the beginning, but we moved on to online only after 3 years of a hybrid program. The teachers now watch pre-recorded videos of teachers doing work, theoretical lessons. They watch me talking about, as if I'm talking right now on a screen. They watch how to do lesson plans, how to write a lesson plan, because at the end of each quarter, there's a lesson plan competition that we organize for teachers across Turkey. And we give them some nice gifts, like we give them a huge Lego or a robot as a gift to for their lesson plan. And then they have weekly assignments. For example, we ask them, who do you think should teach an engineering course at the K-12 level? And then they discuss it on our LMS system, learning management system. During the first and second week, they are required to do interdepartmental meetings at their school. So they have to work together with another teacher and then create some ideas. And then they write a lesson plan. We had a pool of reviewers, around 40, and each reviewer is responsible of giving feedback to 20 lesson plans assigned to him. And then we pay a little bit of money for those teachers who are reviewing their peers' lesson plan. We try to make it like a journal type of review process. The person doesn't know where the lesson plans are coming from. And then the teacher revises those lesson plans, implements them, and sends to the competition with a reflection. We constantly encourage teachers to share their work on social media. Many times, the people who really doesn't know about the program think that this is only about publicity. But I try to convince teachers, telling them this sharing on social media shows how much you believe in your own lesson plan. It's self-confidence. And it's also good sharing practice because we create an open sharing platform for everybody that can see others' ideas. That is in Turkish mostly, but we also have some lesson plans because we also work with teachers from Canada, and they send some lesson plans here. You pick a class, you pick a grade, you just say that I want a lesson plan for 3 hours, and then you see all them coming up there. We have some applications on iOS and Android. Some of them are only in Turkish, some of them are both in Turkish and English, but we try to increase our content which are in English language. The books that you have seen yesterday, they're all translated into English, probably in different world languages soon, if we can find sponsors and in different countries. But the institution that I'm working is very ambitious in terms of opening schools in different parts of the world. So we are expanding, and we need people who are also interested in translating the books or translating the content. And we are also interested in bringing innovation, new ideas into this early STEM curriculum. I was talking to you in the morning about bringing a board game, for example, that will attach to the curriculum that we have at the K4 level, or an online game, which I really like to bring in. You have seen these yesterday. Would you like to see one again?
Hello, I'm Daisy. I'm going to pull a rabbit out of this hat. Are you ready? I'll show you how I did it in the story. I'll show you how I did it in the story.
This is probably the first time that this type of quality of AR is integrated into textbooks.
Hello, I'm Ginger.
And the second character is
I'll
Ginger.
save the world. And by using this, you look like you don't believe me. Let's watch how I save the world. You look like you don't believe me. Let's watch how I save the world.
Kids love this new AR technology, and we like to do more about that. Probably we'll try to make it more interactive with the books, but also with the environment. But it requires creativity and a lot of time, and actually they are quite expensive also. There are also some problems with the AR that we used. They are huge in size. So the iOS application is 1.3 gigabytes. No one would like to download 1.3 gigabytes because they like to play PUBG, and PUBG also takes a lot of space. Do you know what PUBG is? That's an online game. So we didn't just created the books, but we also created teacher guidebooks and a website, which is also quite the first time in Turkey that there's a web page for the teachers to learn more about the books, to download extra materials. So we try to support the teachers in every way that we can. I have a radio program. I'm a radio host, but the reason that I'm doing this is not to promote my work, but to bring teachers and then introduce them to larger network of teachers. Many times when people talk on education, on media, on mass media, they talk so much nonsense. They just talk about the politics, trying to solve the big problems of education, this and that. But very few, perhaps no one is talking about the teaching in the classroom. So the way that we organize this, I meet every fortnightly, every 2 weeks with a couple of teachers in the radio. We pick some objectives from math or science curriculum, and we develop ideas how we can actually teach these in a better way. Students should be able to solve second-degree quadratic equations. I will finish in 2 minutes. And then we discuss on the radio. Another part of it is we took, and then this year we also talked about STEM researchers. So we pick a top journal article and discuss the journal article like you probably do in your PhD discussion circles or in your classes. One last thing that I like to talk about, I just showed it yesterday, but I know that you're recording this, Bo. So I just want you to show this again for those who didn't watch. Now we're also
LabSTAR is a low-cost,
trying to bring some
just-in-time
new
data logging
technology
device equipped with distance, temperature, humidity, and several other sensors via its integrated external port. Supported by the InTeach Lab app on iOS and Android, students can collect data whenever and wherever their curiosity takes them. Data can be shared with and analyzed at a number of platforms, including your favorite spreadsheet software. LabSTAR has its own curriculum too, which is developed by PopularSTEM, with teachers for teachers, allowing teaching to not be limited to the classroom.
The idea behind it is that we don't want the students go to the lab to inquire and collect data. We want it to be in the classroom. We want the teacher to do an experiment in 5 minutes, not spend the whole class and perhaps an hour before the class to prepare the lab and another hour to clean the lab after it. But we want the students to collect data on the spot in the class and then come up with their own hypotheses. So there are some opportunities that we would like to discuss with the GeoGebra team here, how we can actually build on this. Probably social media is very important. Please follow me. I always like to increase my number of followers. The last one is my personal one, but also ITP and LabSTAR is quite popular in social media. Thank you so much, and teşekkürler for watching me and listening to me.
Very nice. So thank you very much, Sencer.
I again left no time for questions, but
I'm very happy that you are here. So
I'm very